all the aspects, all the rich cultural aspect, as well as the challenge that the region is facing. And human rights is, of course, one of those challenges at the moment. And normally you can come and read about, you can look at the book and read, or just chit-chat with other people interested on the same topic, but we also have events. And today we are very privileged to have here a commissioner from Indonesia of AICHR, the Asian Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, which was established 10 years ago, so this is the title. Actually, Thailand was at the time, the country that proposed was a different Thailand, of course, not the same kind of Thailand, but at the time, that was, in those times, was very much in favor of human rights, and as you can see, this year will be again the summit in Thailand, so that at the time was also Thailand was the chair and proposed the establishment of AICHR. So we are going to discuss what is happening in these 10 years. As AICHR contributed to better human rights in the region, and what are the challenges and what are the opportunities for the future. So we will start from the commissioner, of course, Yu Yun. She's very famous in terms of ASEAN. All my students always read their writing because she has written quite a lot. And she's doing a PhD also in Holland at the moment, but she just started as a commissioner in Indonesia. So she will first give an overview, AICHR and her vision of the future. And then we will have two activists, or at least one activist from human rights defender from Malaysia, AICHR. He will give his critical view of the situation, and then we have a member of the Human Rights Commission of Thailand, who is also a human rights defender, who will give her own view of the situation. And after that, we will open the floor, first asking two people to comment. We are also privileged to have a commissioner from Thailand, from the ASEAN Commission on Women and Children. So, and she's also a researcher, among other things, at Chulalongkorn University, and we have also representatives of Forum Asia, which every year does a review of AICHR. So she can give us some insight about what the review this year, which will be launched on the 9th of May, Jakarta, is telling. So we will know before the review is launched. It says. So please, let's start.
Okay.
Yu.
Thank you, Ibu Lia. Good evening. My name is Yu Yun. People have a difficult time to mention my name. Wahyuninong. All right. The title is AICHR at 10. Better future for human rights in ASEAN? ? So this presentation will not answer that question, but I will leave to you whether we have future in ASEAN later on. So I would like to start with this, which everyone already know. We have a lot of human rights issues in almost all countries in ASEAN, but I think the proper question now is, within all these issues, what is the role of AICHR? I'm sure that's your question. AICHR is, by the way, ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. Usually we call this body as AICHR. So I just would like to give you a little bit background. I'm not going to read this slide, but ASEAN is shifting. ASEAN is changing. In 1967, human rights was not anywhere in the establishment of ASEAN. It was for economic development and peace. But ASEAN changed by embracing human rights into the body, into its regionalism project. So I mentioned this number of the years in which we can see as a milestone in which human rights starting to enter this regionalism project of ASEAN. But I would like to highlight, during 2007 until 2017, we have a proliferation of human rights institution and human rights and instruments. So, what does it mean? So it means ASEAN regionalism and human rights created a regional space, regional cooperation, regional interaction, regional platform, and regional standard in which members of the ASEAN, 10 ASEAN member states, discuss about human rights along with the interest of economic and politics, which was not exist before the 2007, before the ASEAN Charter. So, ASEAN has become an important regional platform where member states shape and reshape the way human rights to be discussed in the region and to formulate regional standards, regional human rights standards. As of now, we have two mechanisms of human rights: the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, established by the Charter, Article 14 in 2009, Ibu Lia mentioned earlier, and the ASEAN Commission on the Promotion and the Protection of the Right of Women and Children, established in 2010. And we have, from 2012 until now, number of instruments of human rights. For instance, ASEAN Declaration, ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, Declaration of Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children, Declaration on Strengthening of Social Protection, ASEAN Convention Against Trafficking in Person, ASEAN Consensus on the protection and promotion of the right of migrant workers. AICHR was established by the TOR, or term of reference, and these are the content of the TOR. It consists of principles, purposes, consultative, the characteristic of the body, etc., etc. The modality of AICHR, as mentioned in the TOR, AICHR have the principle of non-interference, like the mother, like the ASEAN. It will develop through the evolutionary approach. It means gradually, step by step. It doesn't change dramatically because it won't work in this region. And it is a consultation body. It is a decision making using the consensus mechanism, and it is intergovernmental body. It means it consists of member states. There are 14 mandates of the AICHR, which I categorize into 6. So AICHR is a standard setting body. AICHR is human rights supporting body. AICHR is a protection body. AICHR is a human rights strategies making body. AICHR is capacity building body. AICHR is a dialogue body. So having the dialogue as a mechanism. As you can see, AICHR has more promotion mandate than protection. Only 2 mandates that deals with protection, which is standard setting and obtaining information from member state in relation to human rights. The rest are promotion. Right. Now, limitation and possibilities. AICHR, you may ask, can AICHR do investigation? Unfortunately not at the moment. Can AICHR do investigation? No. Can AICHR monitor human rights? No. So what AICHR can do? So there are a number of possibilities. It's a way of us looking at this body creatively. So to me, despite the fact that AICHR cannot investigate, cannot monitor, cannot do fact-finding mission, AICHR should be able to hear the voices of the victims. How? AICHR like to have workshops. Within one session of workshop, we can bring victims in. Of course, victims who agree to come, like the migrant workers themselves, the trafficked people. So those who can talk without someone talk on behalf. So they can actually, it is a matter of political will. That's actually the problem. And what other possibilities? AICHR has power to convene. AICHR can have a dialogue, a platform for dialogue. I have two examples. Our civil society, when Raffendi Jamin, the first and second representative from Indonesia, sitting in this position, whenever my organization invited government to come to talk, no one comes. But when we have a joint activity, my organization HRWG, Human Rights Working Group, and AICHR Indonesia, to invite some of the relevant governments, they come. And then the dialogue happens. So that is another, there is an authority inside the institution which does what cannot do in monitoring, investigation, and fact-finding mission, to bring all government, because we need to be heard in that time. So, and also another example that I would like to put here, in that time, we did not know whether talking about torture was sensitive to ASEAN, but we tried anyway. Apparently, number of governments come to the meeting, even though it was only AICHR Indonesia and government of Indonesia and my organization. We talk about prevention of torture. In that time, Vietnam was about to ratify CAT, Convention on Anti-Torture. Attending that meeting, discuss with their peers about anti-torture mechanisms, the prevention torture mechanism, give them more assurance that, oh, this convention is not necessarily dangerous for us. We are not going to be, this is not giving additional burden to the regime, to the country. So a year after, we heard that Vietnam submitted ratification. So we see the possibility of this body to create a platform in which government can learn from other government to create change. So that's what I can see as the power to convince. AICHR also can, despite not able to do all these things, can also establish referral system. So for instance, since I'm in the position, I receive a lot of cases, a lot of complaints. One of them is that many migrant workers coming from Kupang, is eastern part of Indonesia, they receive a lot of dead bodies. So families in Kupang receive a lot of dead bodies of their families who were migrant workers working in Sabah, Malaysia. Particularly from Sabah, not from Kuala Lumpur, not from Kuching, particularly from Sabah. Of course, I cannot do many things, but what I can do is I talk to SUHAKAM. SUHAKAM is the National Human Rights Commission. The timing was strategic, the timing was good. When I talked to them, they said, oh, next week we are going to have a plenary session in which we can decide what kind of issues that we are going to focus this year. They then decide that they will do the fact-finding mission on this issue. The report of the fact-finding mission of SUHAKAM will be reported to the government of SUHAKAM and the government of Sabah and the government of Malaysia, not to Indonesia because we don't have authoritative relationship, right? But they will be able to convey and they will be able to address some of the issues of the families of the migrant workers. For instance, why my husband, my daughter, my son died. What happened? Are they sick? And why there are stitches in the body? It is the autopsy. What is the autopsy? That's English. That's bahasa Indonesia. So I don't have mandate to do fact finding. I don't have mandate to monitor investigation, but I can ask help for other institutions to do it in Sabah, in that country. What kind of changes I will expect? The system, the communication, the case handling on this issue, and then the government of Indonesia usually will be able to bring back the dead bodies back home. But still, they cannot ask SUHAKAM. My government cannot ask SUHAKAM because that's interfering domestic issues. But I can ask because I have this regional mandates. So that's thing that we can do in relation to help victims. And also we can, AICHR can make a working group or focal point on certain issues. I mentioned earlier that ASEAN come up with number of instruments or regional framework or regional human rights framework in ASEAN work in progress, I call it, because it is going to evolve all the time. So we have the ASEAN Human Rights Declaration. There has been a number of criticism about it, including myself, criticizing this document, and I'm now sitting in this position. I have to use this document. So this ASEAN Human Rights Declaration consists of civil political rights, economic, social, cultural rights, right to peace, cooperation on human rights. It has number of limitations. So if we can see this yellow square, this is the ASEAN framework of human rights. But this ASEAN framework of human rights is a result from negotiation, from compromises, from international human rights law, ASEAN way, and national interest of ASEAN. So all the time we have this combination of the three elements. So the question now, AICHR has been here for 10 years. What has the AICHR achieved? One of them is that AICHR generated discourses on human rights. In my research, I do research on state engagement in international human rights law in ASEAN. So more and more sectoral bodies include human rights in their work, include human rights in their declarations, include human rights in their work plan. So and then also we talk about human rights a lot after AICHR was established. Before we cannot talk about human rights, or maybe many countries refuse to talk about human rights. And also it generated interest of civil society to get together talking about human rights and doing advocacy of human rights to regional level. Before AICHR, there was no advocacy on human rights at the regional level. All of them are more either national or international. And then I also asked question to a number of government officials. Why you include human rights into your work? One of the answer which amazed me from ACWC saying, look, we have national commitments on women and children at the national level, but we do not have commitment at the regional level that facilitate us to come up with regional cooperation. Therefore, they bring all the national commitment into one regional cooperation. They come up with the declaration, they come up with collective activities, etc. So, AICHR and ACWC and other regional mechanisms create this space and platform in which regional cooperation can happen. And more sectoral bodies I mentioned earlier already. But what are the challenges? Lack of member state political will. So many people will answer what are the challenges of AICHR in promoting and protecting human rights. Two answers that usually came. Can you guess? Not political will, but many people will mention there are two things. Usually they mention about non-interference principle and not consensus. To me, that's only tools. The lack of political will, that's the problem. The lack of political will that performed by government use consensus and non-interference principle as a tool to say no, to do no action. So it is not the mechanism itself, it is the political will. Because non-interference principle is not new. It is not only ASEAN, it is there in Article 2 of the UN Charter. Even UN has declaration on non-interference. But why some human rights work can be done? So it is not about the mechanism, it's not about the tool, it is the political will that we have problem. And since AICHR is actually a product of member states, I call this member state often take a role as the master. Master will be the one to decide what AICHR can do or what AICHR cannot do. So that's lack of political will to me is the main problem in moving forward with AICHR. And lack of ability to protect human rights because of this master do not want AICHR to be a strong mechanism. They limit what AICHR can do. And lack of people awareness about its role. Now I'm in the position, maybe it is intention. The more people do not know about AICHR, the less comment, the less critics, the less complaint. So we have to reverse it. So we need to popularize this mechanism so people aware about this body and people come forward, sending complaints, etc., etc. So, do human rights have a future? So it is up to you whether you are half full glass or half empty glass. So usually in Chinese restaurant, when the waiter saw the glass is half full, what they are going to do? Pour more waters, right? And then usually when I see my glass is half empty, I will just drink to finish it. So it is up to you which one of you. If you are the half full glass, if you are the waiters of the half full glass, you will pour another waters into it. That's me. I see AICHR as half full glass. Therefore, it needs me, it needs you to pour more waters in it to make it full. So the glass cannot full by itself. There need waiters to pour the water in it, right? And then after this I finish. And then so for half empty glass, we just finish it. We just empty this glass and nothing to do with this. So that's about perspective. And this picture is two-headed llama. This is actually imaginary animal taken from the comic book of Dr. Dolittle. So this llama always have difficulties to walk because the one head want to go here and the other head want to go the other side. So they just, like that. So they need to compromise where to go within these two heads. Similarly in ASEAN and AICHR. AICHR consists of a lot of 10 different heads. If all heads becoming a strong head, it will be difficult to move this body forward. 1, 2, or 3 countries need to compromise, and that's how ASEAN and AICHR has been walked. Very slowly, a lot of negotiation, a lot of debate, sometimes no consensus, because if these two heads come into the different direction, they will die, they will break and then die. That's how ASEAN, if all countries member of ASEAN want to go to their own direction, then ASEAN will finish, and we are not having that in this region. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's see. Now, I think, Sana, you want maybe to reflect whether there is a future, how full or up empty.
Thank you very much, and so sorry for coming late. I'm very humbled to speak about the role of AICHR. Beside me is my colleague from representative of AICHR and famous lawyer and human rights activist. I have the opportunity to work quite closely with AICHR in these recent years after I became the Human Rights Commissioner. But before this, I worked with civil society, and last 10 years, as Yuyun said, that AICHR was established by ASEAN member states. We hope that AICHR can protect the rights and dignity of ASEAN people. And after a decade passed, I think AICHR had done a lot of good things. For example, AICHR working a lot on the rights of the disabilities, about the business and human rights, HIV/AIDS, testing for migrant workers. AICHR trying to work about the climate change and about the youth project. Very popular youth project is about debating on human rights of ASEAN students. Actually, AICHR is defining its relationship with human rights stakeholders. This have to include civil society organization, national human rights institution, academic, and international organization also. But in reality, I think we can see that ASEAN engaged with civil society just in these recent years. But before that, I haven't seen that civil society can give recommendation or can join the meeting or can like some criticize about the role of the of AICHR. And I think sometimes, for example, I want to say that as a human rights defenders and human rights commissioner, I concentrate on investigation mission. But for me, I think that the mandate and role of AICHR is promotion more than protection. Promotion is mean like organize the training, support the youth or whatever. But as you say that I sometimes, but most of the time, AICHR deny to investigation the cases of human rights violation, especially cross-boundary violations. I think now AICHR face a lot of challenges and questions from civil society and victims themselves that how AICHR can protect the rights and value of ASEAN people. For example, as I said, there's a lot of cross-boundary violation. There is statutory obligation on business and human rights that I think everybody knows very well. The Rohingya crisis, we found a lot of graveyard in the border of Thai Malaysia. But for Thailand, we are working a lot and we have the Trafficking Act and we can solve the problem, but in Malaysian side, it's still silent. Then I think for something that we share, for example, the Cold River, the human rights at the border, I think we have to work together more than this. The cases of torture and enforced disappearance, I want to highlight, and also the issue of human rights defenders and women human rights defenders, including the freedom of expression of people and also journalists. That's very serious now in ASEAN. And definitely the rights of LGBT persons. That I think these are my major concern, and I think that AICHR work less on this. May I give you some example. One day I used to ask one of ASEAN representative about the disappearance of Sombat Somphorn, no? And then what I received the feedback is that you should tell your country to find out Somchai, Niratajit and Didi. So I think for some issue we have one heart, no? And we have to share the suffering of victims. It's not only for argue and like kicking the ball. I investigate the cases of trafficking, especially the sex worker. As most women sex workers come from our neighboring countries. And some of the victims and witnesses cannot return to the country of their belonging because they receive serious threats from the perpetrators. And then when I asked one of AICHR representatives about this, how can they protect the victims and witnesses? And they said, Kulakana, these are bad women. They are prostitution. They destroy our tradition. So you know that it's for myself. So I feel that some of AICHR representatives ignore the suffer of the people, and sometimes I think they not totally understand about human rights, especially women's human rights. Anyway, but I think that for myself, I think AICHR should have a more active role. It's not only to like organize the seminar, but I think that sometimes they can work together. Last year, it's very positive after I raised a lot of questions to AICHR representative about access to justice. Last year, they have some initiative about the thematic study on access to justice. They have 3 research. One about capital punishment, second about legal aid to ASEAN people, and third is juvenile justice. But it's still debating. When the researchers present their research, I heard a lot of argument from many of AICHR representatives. So I think this is a very important issue because justice and human rights is the dignity and value of the people. So even though AICHR bodies come from government or government set up or government support the budget or whatever, but when you're working on human rights, I think you have to think more, and you have to like how you can stand and support the victims and the people who are suffering. There's a lot of serious things in this region right now. For example, I think the ACWC can easily visit the detention facilities when we have some of the some refugees or children who move with their family as a refugee. It's very easy and it has no cost. You have to pay for some taxi, and then you can visit them and how to support them. I think this is a very important role that everybody can do, and especially on behalf of AICHR representative. Because now in the region, migration is very serious, I think. The principle of non-refoulement is one thing that I want to highlight. How we can protect the people, how we can guarantee that all people that we deport to our neighboring countries, they will not face any harmful treatment. I think this is very important, and ASEAN have to do more on this. For the issue of aging people, I didn't say that it's not important. It's important, but as you know, in our ASEAN countries, thinking about this problem and have some proposal already. But some issue that ASEAN sharing, they have to sharing about suffering, sharing about how they can do together to protect their people. This is my concern. Now I think AICHR face major problems regarding to the capacity, independence, integrity, and ability to balance its role as a political body and as Human Rights Commission. Many people think that AICHR is like representative of the government, speak on behalf of the government, but not speak on behalf of the victims. So I think, I don't know that how can we change, but AICHR have to be independent. You can speak on behalf of the government, I totally agree, but must not be the voice, must not be like the speak person. But I think sometimes everybody can have investigation. For example, when you visit the detention facilities, you can see very easy a lot of ASEAN people in detention facilities, very crowded, poor hygiene. So I think this is what you can do, and at least I think AICHR representative in all countries can give recommendations to your own countries, or bring this on the table of AICHR. That this is I think AICHR can do. But in many cases of human rights violation, it's very disappointing to the people that AICHR is totally silent on the key incident of human rights violation in the region, failing a basic test of integration as human rights body. So I don't know if the misunderstanding that AICHR is a human rights body or political body. But as you said, I'm very optimistic and we're looking forward. I think that it's time for AICHR to amend the charter. The principle of non-interference and consensus must be reconsidered because it is the big obstacle. The non-interference is including the friendly visit. I used to ask some representative for friendly visit, why our friends from neighboring countries cannot visit your country for some like investigation mission. But it's defined as, everything defined as interference. So AICHR is very strictly on this. And now the very concerned issue is about the rights of the LGBT. I think this is one that AICHR have to discuss together. Even though who they are, they have basic rights the same as us. They must not be attacked by violence, by hate speech, hate crime, and must not be discriminated. I think we have to hold these basic rights so that we can protect our people, not thinking only their sexual life, but their basic lives. And second, I want to give recommendation that AICHR must realize that dignity and value of ASEAN people are more important than the growth of the GDP or the investment. And AICHR should balance human security and national security. I think this is very important. Sometimes when talking to the people on the ground, they don't know the role of AICHR. And they often say ASEAN only talking about like big investment, sharing national resources, but ignore how people lost in the big project. So this is my recommendation for AICHR. I think it's not easy. When we look at the region, it's like a train, no? Like in the Philippines, in the Indonesia much better, Thailand under the military government right now, Laos, Cambodia. So, but I think we have hope. I think all people have hope, and I think that our leader, AICHR, or even Human Commission as well, because some might not know that we have the CNF, is the Human Rights Institution of ASEAN. We have to work together. I think the development is very important, but how people can have can exercise their rights, how people can be protected, how their value will be respected. So I end now, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, let's go to
Okay, good evening. I just read a quote. AICHR's silence gives the impression that its existence simply unnecessary. This I'm reading from the editorial in Bangkok Post on the 2nd of April 2019, entitled Speak Out on Barbarism. This was actually discussing about the response to Brunei's new laws about stoning those who commit adultery and sodomy, amputation and this thing. So this is actually that. Now, the title itself, ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights fails to protect human rights and still toothless after 10 years. First and foremost, position is that it is not a commission on human rights. It should never have been called a commission on human rights because it's not. At best, it is a committee of the ASEAN government to act on human rights. Because the Commission on Human Rights have got certain standards and certain criteria, which we all know. It's the Paris Principles, which I'll talk about it later. Now, when AICHR was formed, I think it took 2 years for its gestation period, so it's actually in 2007 the whole idea actually came about. Finally in 2009 it was actually set up. But even then, Abhisit, who was the Prime Minister chair of ASEAN at that particular time, said it's to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms. But at the same time also admitted that this is the start and the commission is basically toothless. It does not have the teeth that will be strengthened down the road. Now, that formation of AICHR was actually an article in Guardian, ASEAN's Toothless Council. So the question is that, it was comparing itself to the United Nations. But let's look at United Nations. All the United Nations is toothless because all the United Nations bodies, commissions and all can do is actually only just give recommendations to the member state who is actually committing. If the member state does not actually do anything about the recommendations, that's it. End of story. Now, AICHR doesn't even actually do any recommendations. So that's why it's even actually worse than that. But then we go back to the formation of AICHR itself. The AICHR, the purpose of AICHR is very good. Primary objective to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms of the people of ASEAN. Human rights mentioned good proposals in 4 of this thing, but at the same time, at the term of reference, we look at the objective, they set the guiding principles. Now this basically actually remove or weaken or ultimately completely extinguish the possibility of actually protecting and promoting human rights. Okay? So the question is that actually, in terms of the principles, it's a lot of different principles, but ultimately the underlying principle is non-interference in the internal affairs of ASEAN member states, and the recognition that the primary responsibility promote this thing. Now, the AICHR is not a human rights commission, no, because human rights commission, once you're appointed as a human rights commissioner, you're free. You're actually only to carry out the function of actually protecting and promoting human rights at this thing, and that's that. Judges, once you're appointed by any governments, you're expected to actually, your duty, your function is just carried out. That is your job. When it comes to AICHR, the AICHR commissioners are actually appointed by the government. And even in the terms of reference, who are they accountable to? They are accountable to their appointing government. They are not even accountable to human rights in ASEAN or even AICHR itself. So they are actually, at most, diplomats. They are representatives of governments. They have not been actually left free to actually, promote and protect human rights after the appointment. So at the end of the day, Commission of Human Rights Guaranteeing, Human Rights Commission, if you look at the National Human Rights Commissions in Thailand or Komnas in Indonesia or Suhakam in Malaysia, but then talking about human rights commissions, they are, ASEAN itself, 5 countries don't have human rights commissions, national human rights commissions. So where are they? They are not, half of them don't even have national human rights commissions, or are they committed to human rights? So that is the thing. Now, in the National Human Rights Commission, they are independent, they can receive complaints, conduct inquiries, speak out on behalf of human rights, guided by the Paris Principles. So they can be considered commissions of human rights. Whereas in AICHR, it's actually not independent. Now, AICHR, in terms of reference, says it's 3 years. But if you read there, at the next listing says the government can at any time actually remove and change. And according to speaking to you earlier, Brunei has already done that. One day he's there, the next day he's gone. And then also, if there is also provision in the terms of the reference kind of things, if one of the commissioners can't attend, the appointing government can actually just change somebody's to come in as temporary. All this is in the term of reference. So even after appointment, they don't even have that security of tenure per se, 100%. You better be good boys, it not means you can kick them. So I mentioned this one. The paper later on actually will go on a bit this thing. Now, Paris Principles, just a bit highlight, it actually guides how human rights commissions should be. They should have the mandate and competence, a broad mandate based on universal human rights and this thing. AICHR commissions don't have this mandate, not because they're actually, as Yuen has already mentioned, kind of things. They don't add autonomy to government, no, because the problem is that they still have to actually listen to the government. And many of the commissioners are directing, if you do wrong, you get scolded. Independence guaranteed by statute and constitution, and adequate powers of investigation, all this don't have. And so, AICHR has no business or even highlighting human rights in member states. AICHR has no business in actually highlighting violation of ASEAN human rights, ASEAN declarations related to human rights. AICHR cannot even recommend changes in member states' law and policies, how it can be more compliant with Asian human rights. AICHR cannot have periodic human rights review of member states or how they are not complying with the member states. AICHR cannot even receive complaints, conduct inquiries. AICHR cannot even take a position on human rights violations in other parts of the world. So that is the state of AICHR. So one wonders, what is actually the idea of actually developing ASEAN human rights standards and declarations and everything? Is there a need? Because after all the ASEAN states are members of United Nations, and United Nations has already done this. So what are you doing? Why duplicate? So then the question is that should ASEAN itself be interested in actually protecting human rights? Because we have already got the UPR, we have got the special procedures, the special rapporteurs and everything that looks into various aspects of human rights. So At the ASEAN level, what you should be doing, maybe you should go a bit further. We should maybe be talking about actually establishment of human rights court or even human rights body to actually implement, because they have problems. One area is migrant workers. We are having problems of migrant workers get exploited in Malaysia. They are cheated by the workers, and then after that, after their passes are distinct, they are sent back to their ASEAN countries. But at the same time, their violations have not been addressed. Justice has not been done because they are still distinct. This is something that ASEAN can do. Set up a human rights court or a tribunal kind of mechanism. No? Okay. As I mentioned, at best, AICHR is a committee and not a human rights commission. Now, if you look at this thing, in fact, national human rights commissions are actually doing better. Okay, one important thing is that in Malaysia, for example, SWACAP recently, on investigating cases of enforced disappearance, came to the conclusion that it was carried out by agents of the state, namely the special branch of Bukit Aman. So this happened in April. So in terms of National Human Rights Commission, it also depends on the composition of the commissioners. Because in Thailand, for example, now is having a very weak National Human Rights Commission. But at the same time, individual commissioners can speak up. And Ankara has been doing that quite a lot. And as far as the people are concerned, when Ankara speaks up, she's speaking up as a Human Rights Commissioner. This maybe is something that what UN could be doing later on. Because the more she speaks up as a commissioner, even though the rest of the bunch is good for nothing, still it makes a lot of meaning to the people. In fact, in one case kind of things in 2018, Dina Vishnu actually spoke up on the issue of the Rohingya. And this was supported by the Thai AICHR representative and the Malaysian AICHR representative. Although AICHR itself didn't come out with it. What he said that Dino actually was quoted saying that ASEAN and the AICHR must take necessary steps. Although AICHR never did that. So now in terms of CSOs itself, I think so in terms of what has been happening over the years kind of thing since the formation of ASEAN and AICHR is that a lot of CSOs itself have actually been transformed into becoming more diplomatic and more soft. In fact, in that sense, what's been happening is that it's changing. So in the sense, what we need now is that the CSOs and the human rights defender organizations kind of things must refocus their attention to actually promote and protect human rights. And if they want to do that, means that they should actually stop focusing too much on ASEAN or AICHR, knowing that that is there, and come back to where they can work with the people and this thing. And okay, we need a two human rights commission. So one solution is actually just get rid of AICHR and start all over again. Then we also, and it must have the necessary this thing. If not means we need a human rights enforcement or ASEAN court. Is it possible in ASEAN? Yes. The question of a better future of human rights. Maybe we should not be looking at governments, because the problem is that we always look at governments. If governments don't do it, the people can do it, because at the end of the day, people are the bosses. We select our governments. So if government is failing, then we can actually do it. We can actually set up our own People's Human Rights Commission. We can even have our own ASEAN People's Tribunals or whatever it is, and actually change it to that. So the question, AICHR, a better future for human rights in Asia? Maybe not. ASEAN, a better future for human rights in the ASEAN? Maybe not. Maybe we have to look at some other place for a better future for human rights in ASEAN. Thank you.
I think we had all the position, right, from the full glass, half full and half empty or totally empty. I think we had it all. So now I want just to ask very briefly, comments from Jim, and then after from Raquel, very briefly, what is your thinking after you hear this from your own perspective, and then we open to the floor.
I can make a comment. Actually, I would like to echo Yuyun in regard to the ASEAN is shifting and changing. We are not a standalone commissioner anymore. Our even from AICHR is from APSC pillar. I think that everyone familiar with the ASEAN 3 pillars. And AICHR is from APSC pillar. I'm from ACWC from ASCC pillar. And nowadays we work closely together. And even that we work based on our work plan that covering 5 years. But anyhow, we also had a partnership meeting with which also covering government partners, CISOs, and also with international organizations. So meaning that we also including the perspective or the priority areas that included in our work plan. And not only for example, maybe some of you may not familiar with ACWC. We are 9 years old now, and we also, according to the report, we still lack of visibility. We did a survey in our university, and 90% of the students, I mean for some, not all students at Chulalongkorn University, but from some faculties, that 90% of them didn't recognize, which is ACWC. So that we also, working on, also I think that will be similar to AICHR, but probably AICHR may have more reputation because they're covering many areas of the human rights issue. We from ACWC be focusing on the promotion and the protection of the rights of women and children. Okay, and that we have, under our work plan, we have 16 thematic areas. I think maybe some of you think that we're working on one area, but actually this 16 thematic area is a cross-cutting issue with other ASEAN sectoral bodies work plan. For example, on the issue of human trafficking, we also have our work plan is cross-cutting issue with SOMTC and also with AICHR as well, and also with ACNW, the Commission on Migrant Workers as well, and on violence against women, and also peace and security, and others that we covering all the rights issues that related to women and children. And I think that that we believe in the challenges and also the strength. We respect our own strength and challenges as well. And I see this is the opportunity. Okay, I will conclude. I see this is the opportunity that we have AICHR, we have ACWC, and we also have National Human Rights Commission. Even we have National Human Rights Commission, only 5 ASEAN member states. But I think this is a good opportunity that we can work closely together. I would like to raise one concrete example that, for example, in Thailand, when we had the issue of human trafficking case, and this is also that we also need to strengthen the understanding among officials themselves as well. Because as a representative of the ACWC, it's not easier to approach the shelter or visiting the cases compared with National Human Rights Commission. The National Human Rights Commission could approach the cases prior to ACWC representative. We had to, approach many organizations, and then finally I could meet with the cases by approaching, working closely with NGOs, but not through the government officials. So this is the example where we can bridge the gap, where we can strengthening our collaboration with other mechanisms, not only other mechanisms, but also with the existing mechanisms that happen in our own country.
Thank you. Sorry for short, so that we have time to discuss.
Okay.
Hello. Okay. So my name is Rachel from Forum Asia. For the past 9 years, we've been creating the annual evaluation of ASEAN human rights mechanism. So this year, we will launch the 10 years review of AICHR. I mean, it's no surprise that according to our survey and research, the AICHR have not met the expectation of the CSOs. They have failed to meet the expectations of the CSOs in terms of their mandates, and also we are utilizing the Paris Principles parameters. Although Hector thinks that it's different animals, but I think for us it's really important to utilize the Paris Principles to build on the argument on what went wrong and how we can improve it, as well as looking at the AICHR. But I think beyond what Bayuyun and also Kun Angkana have shared, the failure is happening not only because the lack of political will, but systematically we see the systemic weakening of the AICHR due to the raising of populist authoritarian regimes in ASEAN. So we should looking at the human rights situations in a larger scale within ASEAN itself. And then in the report, we're looking at 4 aspects to looking at the effectiveness of AICHR. First is the protections mandates, which already been elaborated by Hector and also Konakana and also by Yuyun, so I will not go through it, but mostly there are a lot of expectations for the bodies to have a complaint mechanism. The second is on promotion. So although for the past 8 years, AICHR have implemented 121 activities that consume more than 6 million USD, and they stated that most of the activities are focused on the promotions, but the public understanding about the bodies and also the public trust are still very low, and reflected by the survey. So this is very huge homeworks by AICHR. And then the third point is the institutional strengthening. Kun Angkana have mentioned about the independence and impartiality of AICHR that are still becoming a challenge. Until now, 70% of the AICHR representatives are selected appointed directly by the government. So it's really important to have an open and independent selections mechanism to ensure that the commissioners are representing the people's interests, not only the government interests. And then also, repeatedly since 2010, the recommendations to AICHR are to have an open information channel for their activities. I think there's a notable improvement by issuing their annual performance report, but a lot needs to be happen on assessing the substance and also the impact of those activities beyond listing out activities. And with the utilization of social media, some of the progressive reps like Mayuyun have constantly updating us with the information, which is a notable development. And then on institutional strengthening, I think it's really important for us to move beyond complaining on the consensus decision making. We need to really build on the coalition of willing and able as the alternative of the consensus, working with the progressive reps to expedite their response if individual commissioners do not have ability to give response. And then lastly, on engagement with stakeholders, there's a lot of sketchy feedback on the CSO's engagement, while we are applauding the CSO's engagement with the 2015 CSO's engagement guideline, but there's also a sense of apprehensions by some of the CSOs that are engaged with the AICHR because some of the reps are saying that CSOs cannot talk about quote-unquote sensitive human rights issues, which can be categorized as everything under the sun. So I think in the report says that the CSO engagement guideline needs to be enhanced by adding systematic effort to have interface meeting between CSOs and AICHR, as well as code of conduct on the interventions that enable CSOs to talk more about key human rights issues in the regions. And there's also needs to work with the UN mechanism, with the special rapporteurs, especially on the thematic issues that has been identified, such as human rights defenders, freedom of expressions, sexual orientation, gender identities, and then yeah. So I think I will wrap up my comments. Hopefully we can have more time to discuss. But yeah, I'm done. Sorry.
Well, quite a lot to be done. Yeah? I don't know how many million will be needed for that. So, okay, let's start. 3 questions. 1. Any more questions? No? So, okay, let's start with this first question.
You have to remember that it was something of a miracle that human rights was put into the Charter of ASEAN over the objections of Singapore, Malaysia, and Myanmar. It took the foreign ministers to overrule the ministers of justice. Why? Because they were concerned with international reputation. Ministers of justice were internally focused and did not want a human rights element in ASEAN. So we have to remember we started with a miracle, and there were strong views not to call it a commission, and the opposing governments were satisfied by calling it an intergovernmental commission. Therefore, it was clearly the product of the government. Okay. 2 governments in the region only set up open processes to nominate their commissioner. Sri Papa was the first from Thailand who got the Thai government to say that she did not represent the Thai government, she was a representative of the people of Thailand. So we have had, and Rafi in Indonesia was amazing in terms of what he was able to do as an individual commissioner. He would hold workshops and discussions and speakers, and all of that got onto the website of AICHR. This was kind of unexpected, and it all looked like this was official AICHR stuff, when of course it was not. And so we see again with Union, love you darling, love you. This is a continuation of the Thai and the Indonesian pattern of subverting AICHR from within by having authentic voices, active voices, skillful voices, to use what possibilities there are in the structure as it exists. We're not going to get rid of it. We're not going to get rid of no interference with domestic policy in the UN either. But that doesn't mean there can't be very active agendas set up, changing fundamentally the nature of these organizations. In the first days of the UN, you could not name a country as a violator of human rights. How far we have come since then. So happy to have come here and heard you speak, you.
Okay, so this is a fun supporter, but the question remains whether individual or institution, because after all, Yuyun can talk a lot, but it's still not a position of ICR. So the question is then, do we need ICR, or we just keep Yuyun without ICR? That is a question. Okay, let's get any more comment or questions before going back to the, yes?
Good evening, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm a media consultant. Before I used to work with the Southeast Asian Press Alliance, which is the organization based in Bangkok that works with
on the protection of press freedom and free expression, we did follow how AICHR worked, and at some point along the way, we did engage with AICHR. From my observation, it's 10 years now. There's a lot to improve in terms of from the point of view of free expression, or those who do the protection of journalists. I feel the need that there's a call for more AICHR active role in the promotion and protection of free expression, because this issue has been a major concern now, facing the people of the region, not just human rights defenders, not just the media, also the victims on the ground when they try to raise their voice, or human rights defenders who try to raise the voice on their behalf, of the media who try to uncover the story of human rights violation. I feel that this is really worrying me, as I have been working on this issue, and there's no organization in Southeast Asia that really focusing on this issue. There has been region-wide or even international concern, and it was expressed through various meetings in the last few years. There was one time there were discussions in Jakarta during the World Press Freedom Day about creating another regional mechanism to deal specifically with freedom of expression and freedom of the media. So my question to you, is there any, do you see this is possible, or do you think it's perhaps it's the idea that whose time has not come yet? If there is going to be a kind of way to engage with AICHR on this particular issue, what would be your response from your observation being in office in the last few months? You're still optimistic?
Okay, Rebecca, and then I want to add my last.
Hello. This kind of goes to the sort of glass half full, glass half empty metaphor, I guess, or analogy. And there was a lot in this talk about what AICHR isn't doing and the barriers it's facing. But it would be nice to know a little bit more about the work that it has achieved. I mean, I think Yuyin kind of talked about promotion rather than protection, like, and maybe education. I think it's important to, to kind of focus on the achievements as well as the challenges. And I'd be interested to know about that. And sorry, I'm just going to sneak in one more question that you don't have to answer. What kind of influence do foreign powers outside of ASEAN have on the progression of human rights within ASEAN? Like, I'm thinking about China and its influence in ASEAN, and maybe other foreign powers. Sorry.
I'm going to take my power to ask the last question. Two questions. One very concrete, yeah. In this region, there are two major human crime against humanity, which we are discussing to bring it to. One is the war on drugs in the Philippines, killing of thousands of people, extrajudiciary killing, and the Rohingya, more than 1 million people, we don't know many. So these are considered by many crime against humanity. We are not talking about what is done, but what can AICHR do in the future can do anything about this? Because so far, I am afraid it's been very silent, to say the least. And the third one is what can do indeed for the LGBT, which we are seeing as becoming increasingly another potential crime against humanity if we are not careful, because Indonesia Brunei, even Malaysia, and many other countries quite oppressive rules. So this is what can be done in the future. Now, and the second is how much money come from ASEAN government, how much money come from other governments that are not ASEAN government. I know in the beginning was quite a lot that was not ASEAN. Now, how much is now really ASEAN? Meaning, money is always commitment, right? How much money are they putting into this commission? We start with this time, and we start with AICHR, and then we go to the positives. Okay, let's start. Okay, the positive ending.
Oh yes.
It is really
Don't let him talk the last. Thank you very much for the comments. Thank you very much for the responses. I would like to answer the last question first, because this is the easiest one. How much money, how much contribution from member state? In the beginning of AICHR, it was 20,000 per country. So ASEAN member countries contributed 1,900,000 something million to the ASEAN. To 20,000 out of the 1 million goes to AICHR. But it has been increased 5% every year. Now, each country contributed 30,000 US dollar for the AICHR. Depending on how many activities that AICHR has done in the year, but beyond this contribution covered by dialogue partners, other member states, including China. There was a question about China. It's quite surprisingly that China was interested on human rights, especially in ASEAN. China has supported activities of AICHR Cambodia in relation to right to education. Despite the fact there has been number of disagreement among AICHR representative about the contribution of China, but it happened anyway. So this is something that if you think that non-interference principle can funds, can guard many things, sometimes it doesn't work that way. In relation to the issue of the killing and Rohingya, I think this is two different issues, different responses. So after years of engagement with the government of Myanmar, apparently government of Myanmar wanted to open up and then wanted to work with ASEAN through the AHA Center, the ASEAN Humanitarian Responses Center. So the AHA Center was assigned to do the need assessment for the purpose of repatriation. So they were asked to go to Rakhine. Why AHA Center? AHA Center has been the victim of its success. So AHA Center has been quite trustworthy among the member states. So they obtain this kind of trust from member states, and then they can go to Rakhine. So they just finished their first visit. The report I heard already reported to the government in the meeting in Mandalay, but we have not heard anything outside of the ACDM, the ASEAN. I cannot remember the name of the acronym of the ACDM. But the rest of the ACDM, we haven't received the report. So what is the plan of AICHR? So we have received in the first meeting in Bangkok, in my first meeting in Bangkok as a AICHR, we received update from ASEAN Secretariat on how and what they have done in terms of Rakhine, but that's only ASEAN Secretariat went to Rakhine. And then we also discussed the requests from International Fact-Finding Mission, Pak Marzuki Darusman. that was the second letter to request for a meeting. Last year, the request for a meeting was rejected because there was no consensus. Rejected, no meeting. So in my time in that meeting, there was no consensus. But then I said, those who disagree to meet with the fact-finding mission should not preclude the rest who want to meet with fact-finding mission. And so apparently they agree. So Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia will meet with fact-finding mission. So this is something that we try to build establish as a practice. Even though we disagree, we should find ways to go around, because we are not in the position to abolish the non-interference principle, the consensus, but we should be able to find ways. So that's also a case with the meeting with ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights. ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights has been very, very critical, and therefore their presence was not welcome. So again, I said, those who disagree to meet with the parliamentarian should not dictate those who want to meet them, and they agree. So again, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia will meet with the parliamentarians, ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights, later in Jakarta meeting. So these need to establish as practice. In AICHR, in ASEAN, we usually apply practice first, institutionalized letter. So it is about a process. So it is about looking or find ways to go away or to work within our limitations. Sometimes when limitation removed, it doesn't mean it works. Sometimes it doesn't work that way. So we just have to be quite pragmatic in using possibilities we have. As far as I remember, the issue of judicial killing has never been raised in the last. So I don't know, because I do not see the issue has been mentioned anywhere in the document of AICHR, and I don't know why. There has been I saw there are 2-3 letters coming from civil society complaining about this. The extent whether AICHR has responded to that complaint, I don't have any information. So that would be my homework in the next 3 years, how to be able to respond some of the issues, at least to say thanks or recognize that we received the letter to the sender. So that's because they need to know that our letter arrived to the person that we want to reach. So I think there is also, I think, the reason why we have not received a lot of complaints because there was no mechanisms, there was no interest from civil society to send the complaints to AICHR. But there was in 2013 during Brunei was the chair. Brunei said, "Oh, we received a lot of letters from civil society. What should we do?" And then they immediately made a retreat. Retreat means a meeting only consists of 10 member states, 10 member of AICHR, without ASEAN Secretariat, to talk about the issues. In that time, the issue of Rohingya, the issue of Sombat Sompon were discussed. So there are possibilities. It's just we need. So for instance, myself, I need trigger how to bring this. Also, in relation to AHA Center, I've been thinking how to table the plan or the interest to meet with AHA Center, because I cannot just out of the blue saying, "Hey, we need to meet with AHA Center." So, but I found ways now, but I cannot talk to you now. Yes.
Invite you again.
Yeah, let us. So, do I have answered all the questions? Oh, regional mechanism. Yeah, I know that there was a suggestion to come up with a regional mechanism focusing of freedom of expression. What we have been thinking is in AICHR, because in rule of procedures of AICHR, it allows for AICHR to create a working group. So the working group can later evolve into something, either independent expert, or, of course, I'm not going to use the word independent expert in the beginning, but it allows us to evolve. Because we have to start with modest initiative and then develop. Creating a new regional mechanism is also suggested by person with disabilities, the group of person with disabilities. But my personal opinion, that would be not effective, because in ASEAN, when you want to establish this kind of mechanism, you have to find the standard, to set the standard. AICHR was established by the charter, so it's strong enough. We have strong enough mandate as a human rights commission to carry out our mandates. And government always think about the contribution. The more they create the bodies, the more contribution they have to give to the regional to this regional body, and that might not be the option. So either having this referral system, like I mentioned earlier, or create working group within the AICHR. So I found out that ILO and many groups created this Southeast Asia Fishery Forum. This forum consists of legal aids and all things for fishers. So this is another area in which AICHR can work with this forum for referral system. So if there is a similar forum for journalists, especially who has been harassed or the family of the journalist that have been murdered, we can use this mechanism to provide services, while AICHR will be able to come up with a referral system at the moment. So I think that's yeah. I think that.
So we go to the real activist. Okay.
I will quick respond to the issue of Rohingya crisis. Regarding to my mandate, I investigate a lot of cases of the Rohingya who were detained at detention facilities. We can, if we look at the Rohingya people, if they are victims of human trafficking, victims or witnesses of human trafficking, they will be under the Trafficking Act, and they will be taken care of. But if they are not victims or witnesses, so they will be arrested regarding to overstay or whatever. And I investigate one case that is very traumatized to me. She's a girl, Rohingya girl, only 16. She came to Thailand with her sister when she's only 12. And her sister can escape to Malaysia, but she was arrested and detained at the detention facility in southern Thailand. And last year, she had a seriously blood disease, and she passed it away in detention center. When I investigate, I can say that the official of immigration center try to do their best, like send her to the hospital or whatever, but detention center or prison is not the place for people who didn't do anything wrong, especially when they are sick. And for this case, I have a recommendation to the government to end child detention. And very luckily that the government responded quickly, respond to recommendation of the commission quickly, and now they have no children in detention facilities in Thailand. The children with their mother will not be detained anymore. And now, and other recommendations from the commission is that the government should have some screening mechanism, because there's a lot of migrations or migrants in Thailand. Some are committed or breaking the law, or some involved with drugs, or some are refugee asylum seekers, or many. So that the Commission suggests to the government to have this screening mechanism, and how we can protect the innocent people, the refugee or asylum seekers. So they need the appropriate measures. They need the right to work and can access to education or health services. Every time we're talking about the Rohingya issue, I often attacked it by many people. It's like that why Thai people have to use our resources to take care of this area. But by the way, everybody born equal, and if we treat them, respect their rights, give them rights to work so that they can survive by themselves while waiting to move to the third country or maybe back to the country of their belonging. So this is very important. Another role of Human Rights Commission is I can bail, no, asking for bail the people, the asylum seeker or the refugee, asking for bail if receive that there's some like the women with pregnancy or women with children, so that the Commission can easily ask for visiting and ask for bail, or we ask the civil society or some independent organization to raise money for bail. Yeah, this is the role of the National Human Rights Commission. It's not the same as AICHR, because the Human Rights Commission have to follow the Paris Principle. We have very clear mandate. The important is to investigation, the protection. Not only promotion is also important, but to investigate the case of human rights violation is very important. I think that from my side, as ASEAN people, I also have high expectation to AICHR. Officially, we have to call Miss Union as Her Excellency. Yeah, His Excellency or Her Excellency. Yeah. But for the Human Rights Commission, we are like commissioner. Yeah. So we have high expectation to AICHR people, and I hope that AICHR representative will, even though they are selected by the government, but the most important is they need to have the human rights lens rather than humanitarian lens or political lens. So that I think this will help a lot. And I happy to work with the AICHR more in the future.
Okay, quickly. I think you asked the question about the money thing. Oh, she asked the question. Now the fact of the matter is, the question is to ask, who pays the Human Rights Commissioners? Do you know? It's not the ASEAN. It's not ASEAN or AICHR that gives them. The money is actually paid by the individual government. They get a salary every month so that they can actually focus on AICHR kind of things. Answer is no. They get certain travel allowance, and it depends government to government. Fact of the matter is that in terms of AICHR's 10 representatives, 7 of them are actually civil servants. That means they are actually working in the foreign ministry of that particular country. So except for Indonesia, I think Malaysia and Thailand, the rest of them are there. That is the reality. And Singapore, 4. Okay, so that becomes the big question kind of things, you know. So you might have the money. So if AICHR is going to do anything kind of things, you know, ultimately it's actually not AICHR, you know, it's the creativity of these possibly more independent human rights commissioners. They can maybe move certain things, you know. So is it an AICHR position or is it UUN's? So that, I think with regards to the other questions, it's already been dealt with. Yes.
So the conclusion is that
No,
for reform.
I think AICHR as it presently stands kind of thing, because AICHR is just a door. But the problem is that it's a door that actually can't do anything. It comes under the foreign ministers, which goes under the prime ministers or the head of government. And so therefore you've actually put about 2 levels there. When previously kind of things you would have gone straight to the head of governments to actually think, because they ultimately would be having the implementing power as far as their nation states are concerned. Because ultimately the change doesn't happen in ASEAN, it has to come back to the country. So is AICHR actually a door that we actually should be keeping it, or whether we should change it? Can it be changed based on the history and the terms of reference as it is, or should we actually just be fighting for something totally new? So that is a decision for the ASEAN people.
I think we have many things to continue ponder, right? One is to, okay, yes.
Luckily or not, I don't know, but this year we have a chair of AICHR, that is, she's the former chair of the AICHR Human Rights Commission Thailand. So maybe we can hope.
Yes, yes.
So we trust in the innovative capacity and creativity of the commissioner, but I think we want more than that. One possibility is to try to appeal ASEAN to the Paris Principle and try to reform quite drastically the charter and everything that can happen only with pressure from outside. It's not going to happen with the current climate, and for sure not by the commissioner alone. The second, of course, is to then say it's not useful for civil society to engage and look for other alternatives, including alternative human rights commission run by independent organization rather than government. I mean, we are just speculating on the future for the next 10 years, right? So we have 10 years, but I think the crucial part is indeed for people also to change their government, because some of them, we are not going to support human rights. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, there are very few that can be called democratic, so it's a long way to go, and for sure ASEAN is a reflection of the national government, so we cannot expect different things because they reflect the view of the country. So in the end of the day, it's the national context which counts. So with this, I close this very interesting session, and we can continue the discussion. There is some food outside, thanks also to an Indonesian friend, Bukeni. She has brought some Indonesian food outside. So run, because it might finish, and some fruit, so you can continue, and please give a donation on your way out, because we can do this thanks to your support. Thank you very much.